guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called How to Prey on the Master. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! At twilight on Friday, Elle Louise Therese de Blois' fiance, Francois Joseph de Bar, breaks off their engagement, simply because he doesn't love her anymore and he has been cheating all this time with Adelaide de Grande. Even knowing what Adelaide has caused to crush Elle's heart, she still asks to be congratulated. Well, congratulations on being shameless. Too bad. Elle's not crazy enough to tolerate it. Instead, she clenches her fist and punches her ex-fiancé right where he has the guts to be audacious. Elle walks into the ballroom as if nothing happened. When asked about where Francois is, she blatantly tells them that they're over. Her friends then congratulate her on her freedom and offer her a drink. Yes, that's certainly how you should deal with heartbreak. From a distance, nobles flock over Theodore, who suddenly shows up in the society. He was Elle's classmate at the military academy, and rumors spread that he's like a crazy dog. Suddenly, Francois and Adelaide enter the room. Elle remains silent as she remembers how he couldn't take his eyes off Adelaide. Perhaps because of love, she turned a blind eye and still clung to him, unable to let go of the fact that when she met him, his beaming smile captivated her heart. Elle can't afford to look at them anymore. She runs off to the garden as the thorny grass pricks on her feet. It hurts, but it's incomparable to what she's feeling. If she had known that this would happen, she wouldn't have fallen for him. That night, she begs God to turn back time. If that happens, she'll never ever love him again. And just like that, she passed out. However, she suddenly finds herself bound by chains all over her body. A mysterious figure appears and declares her execution. Her mind's been plagued with questions. What did she do wrong? Why did she have to die like that? At that moment, she was executed. However, she woke up from a familiar voice trying to calm her down. When she opens her eyes, she finds herself in Theodore's room as he greets her Master. Auguste Theodore Jean de Clement, the second son of the famous knight Duke Clement. And he is drop-dead gorgeous. Why do people keep making characters that are this hot? Elle went to the same military academy with him, and he's also the main character of the party where she called off her engagement. She sighs in relief when she realizes that her clothes are still intact. It appears that Theodore brought her to the door after she passed out in the garden. In short, he saved her. They indeed spent their cadet days together, but they were never close to each other. During the inauguration ceremony, he went totally out of control and assassinated a lot of people. He's the so-called crazy dog that everyone recognizes. So why did he save her, and what's with the master thingy? Suddenly, Theodore leans forward, saying that being cautious is a good thing because if she isn't, he'd probably be disappointed. Elle clasps his shirt so he won't lean closer, but his persistence makes her immovable. She closes her eyes as he's about to kiss her, but then he holds her nape and whispers that he wants to do it with her. The moment he kisses her hand that's been clinging to his shirt all this time, Elle quickly runs away. He's so direct? After that interaction, Elle is prepared to report on duty as if nothing ever happened. Elle is the deputy commander of November Knights and the heir of the Honorable Blois, who protects the royal family. Given that position, there's no time to be sad forever after a series of unexpected things. In the training area where she keeps swinging her sword, Maurice du Rieu, son of her mom's lieutenant, compliments her for being so much like her mom. Another knight approaches them, this time Laverne de Lucy, who's known due to her outstanding information-gathering ability. Suddenly, Elle's attention catches Laverne's big mouth as if there's something going on that she doesn't know about. When she enters her supposed-to-be messy office, she's surprised to see how perfectly organized it is. Theodore is in her office, and before she knows it, he is kissing her hand, introducing himself as the deputy commander's assistant. Is this why he keeps calling her master? Elle complains to the commander, but he tells her that it's already been processed and that it can't be changed anymore. Sure, it isn't that unfortunate to have him as her assistant. Unless she makes a mistake and her head will go flying in the opposite direction, sir. Elle is now fuming in anger, asking Laverne if she already knew about it, but didn't bother to tell her. She definitely knows everything. She even knew the color of Her Majesty's underwear today. Laverne denies his accusation, however, maybe she'll know if it's about Maurice's underwear today. Dun dun! Maurice enters the scene. Elle finds her new prey, so Morris has no choice but to tell her the truth, and that boils down to one person who can easily make such a decision. Marie Josephine Claire, aka Princess Pippin, is perfectly equipped with all the skills necessary for military tactics, diplomacy, and politics as the next empress even at a young age. No doubt, she's the culprit behind it. As for Pippin's defense, Theodore is her gift for Elle's broken engagement. Pippin knows that Adelaide will flip the story, making Elle the villain who interfered with their love. And exactly because of that, Pippin can't keep her eyes open when someone tarnishes her knight's honor. That's why she gave Theodore as a gift to cover a scandal by another scandal. To further convince Elle, Pippin starts to fake her tears, emphasizing that the right person to trust Theo to is Elle herself. Elle's been deceived by those tears once or twice, but it's different this time. She won't budge to disagree no matter how much she makes that puppy face. However, Pippin managed to come up with a solution, and that is a 10% salary increase. Understandably, she got her there. Back in the office, Elle firmly reminds Theo to follow her orders, and to her surprise, he isn't putting up a fight about it. Normally, he would give off a sharper and more discontented impression. However, a sudden menacing feeling envelops the room as if a hungry dog has found its prey. Theodore reminds her that if she keeps pushing him away, he'll get more excited, just like how a dog behaves towards their master. Elle isn't backing down. After all, she's the one who stopped him when he went out of control. As long as she's around, she won't let that happen again. And so, Theo grabs her hand and tells her to hold onto his leash by calling him Theo. That night, Elle was executed in her dream for serial murder and treason. When she wakes up, she reads the news about how her broken engagement was just a tiny whisper in town. But still, being tied to Theo is more manageable than she thought. Shortly after, it takes her 20 minutes to go inside her office, where Theo is, even though it's still the second day since he reported on duty. And so, Morris gives her a book entitled, "There's No Such Thing as a Bad Dog," believing that it will be useful to her someday. When Morris takes his leave, Elle is startled that Theo opens the door for her. When she finally recovers, she asks about why he keeps calling her master. Theo isn't giving any useful response, to the point where Elle is losing her mind to squeeze out answers from him. Suddenly, Theo leans closer to her with a smirk on his face. Elle is well aware of this kind of behavior, so she pins him down to the floor and tightly grips her hand around his nape. Elle is quite scary at this point, but she realizes that Theo isn't even resisting. In fact, he's actually enjoying this. Okay, I can tell that this relationship is very interesting. I mean, what exactly are you two doing? Suddenly, Laverne enters the door without even knocking first. Of course, she witnesses how the two are in an awkward position. Elle lets him go and acts like nothing happened. Theo then questions why she keeps getting angry at him when he just wants to organize her cape. Elle blushes and realizes that she left a mark on his nape. Out of embarrassment, she orders Theo to go with Laverne in going to the head office to process some documents. More like a good chance to get away from him, Elle. This time, she gives up on arguing about how he calls her and even orders him like she's some kind of master, training a dog how to perform its duty. While Laverne and Theo are out, she can't help but notice how handsome he is. Exactly! He's so handsome, and dangerous too, which makes him look hotter. When asked why Elle turned out to be his master, Theodore looks at her like a hungry dog and suddenly exclaims that it has to be Elle de Blua. Wait, what's with Elle? Is this somehow connected to her nightmares? Did she really go back in time? Meanwhile, in her office, Elle keeps reading the book that Morris gave her. She then learns about how dogs like to take walks. She wonders if Theo will be well behaved if they do that. When the two return, Laverne tells her that when they arrived at the head office, those meticulous aristocrats are daunted on the spot by the look in Theo's eyes. What did he do to make them lose their spirit out of the blue? Elle realizes that he's somewhat useful. Come to think of it, her office, which was a mess with piles of papers, suddenly became so organized. Somehow, she feels guilty for hurting him earlier, but oh, what's that look on his face? Why does he keep staring at her? Excuse me, Elle, but I think you're the one staring at him. Even taking a sip of water becomes a burden when he's looking at her like that. Realizing that he sees her swallowing her saliva, she gets up and takes him for a walk outside. Theo is quite good at memorizing the routes of the area. Though the streets are clean, they should still patrol the area more often. Theo then looks so happy, realizing that it's only the two of them. Seems like the book is more useful than she thought. Suddenly, Elle senses a strange movement in a tunnel. She grabs her sword to attack it, but a stray kitten comes out. Thinking that no one's there, they leave the area. However, someone is indeed hiding in the dark. Though the streets are quite peaceful, there's a thief who robs from the bourgeoisie houses. There's no clue to identify him, so they named him Zephyr, or the god of the west wind, because he's as fast as the wind. It's quite late in the afternoon, but Theo wants to walk with her more. Who knew that a crazy dog like him could also be as cute as a puppy? Suddenly, someone attacks Elle behind and snatches her sack. Could it be Zephyr? Theo wants to prioritize her in going to the doctor, but Elle commands him to catch the thief. This time, Theo manages to catch up to the culprit and swings his sword to cut his neck, but the thief is able to dodge it. But no, he can't let it happen twice, so he grabs the rope and knocks the thief to the other side of the street. He's about to pierce his sword at the culprit's body when Elle suddenly steps in. For a moment, he's quite confused that her ankle isn't hurting anymore. Then, Morris explains that the welcome party for the newcomer is an important and special event that can't be missed out. Elle pretended to get hurt in front of Theo, and the knight acted like a thief to purposely lure him to the bar. This kind of act has been a practice to welcome a new member of the November Knights. Before, Elle knocked the thief out even before he arrived at the bar. Jeez, she can't easily be taken down. And so Elle officially welcomes him to the November Knights. Theo thanked her for coming on time because if she didn't, there'd be no welcome party but a funeral instead. Jerome, the thief, still trembles in disbelief that Theo actually tried to kill him. Ugh, Theo is indeed a dangerous person. Inside the bar, the commander isn't around because he has to use the princess's necklace as bait to catch the Zephyr. And so, Elle has to say something on behalf of the commander in introducing Theo to the other knights. However, the atmosphere is very different from other welcome parties. The knights are too quiet. Well, can we blame them? Theo is a royalty, the Duke's son, and the protagonist of a dangerous rumor. Luckily, Laverne comes to the rescue. Thinking that she doesn't have to worry about a thing, Elle decides to leave the table. However, everyone freezes when he calls her master. Elle's face turns red the moment he keeps repeating the word. Now she can't even turn around and face everyone who thinks that she's treating him like a dog. Why on earth would a royal-blooded call a deputy commander master? Now, Elle doesn't know what to do. This time, Theo joins the conversation and tells them that he owes something to her. Is there anything that even a duke's son lacks in his life? The moment they face Theo, they can't let a word out of their mouth. I mean, look at that face. Even I would be starstruck not because of his serious aura, but because of how handsome he is. And so Laverne comes up with a game. All the knights should ask something to Theo, and if he doesn't want to answer, he has to drink a glass of her special cocktail. This drink looks like we're about to go into a coma for a week. Elle approves Laverne's idea, thinking that Theo has a high alcohol tolerance. However, she didn't expect Laverne to ask something trivial. Does he like her? Elle chokes up at the sudden question. Theo then offers his handkerchief to her. Judging by his atmosphere, there must be something. Theo confidently answers them, but before he can finish his sentence, Elle frantically orders him to hurry up and drink. Elle is such a party pooper. After one shot, that definitely doesn't look like one shot at all. Somebody help him. Theo laughs and tells Elle that it really looks delicious. The angels from heaven heard us. This time, Elle drinks the second shot, remembering how dangerous Theo can be. Even if she has to sacrifice her life, she will for the safety of the knights. After that, Elle takes a break on the balcony together with Morris. Shortly, they hear a loud thud inside. When she enters the room to check, Theodore already passed out. Turns out, he's a lightweight drinker. Elle has to carry him on her back despite how heavy he is. Elle is the only safest person to carry a dangerous man like him after all. But well, easier said than done. Now that Theo is in a terrible state, she has to muster up the courage to face the Duke and the Duchess, or else the lives of the knights who made him like that will be in danger. In the carriage, Elle realizes that she has never done something like this when she was still with Francois. All this time, she's pretending that she's fine, but things are just too hard to deal with. Despite the unrequited love she had for several years, she still wants him to. Her thoughts are interrupted when Theo wakes up and unbuttons his uniform. Elle tries to stop him, but the carriage suddenly stops and she ends up sitting on top of him. She's about to regain her balance when he suddenly grabs her hand and pins her on the couch. He cups her face and begs her to do something just once. What something, Theodore? You should be more accurate or we will think of something else. Though he's quite handsome from afar, Elle can't deny the fact that he looks even more handsome up close. Theo then holds her neck, still blabbing about how it feels like a dream to hold her with his own hand. Huh? I'm sure it was so romantic earlier, and now it's gotten dark? Theodore, what exactly are you after? Elle knows that this won't do her good, so she pushes his face away, but he only licks her hand after. Remember, Elle's also under the influence of alcohol. Still, they can't keep doing this because a knight needs to be chased. The moment Theo leans closer to kiss her, the driver announces that they have arrived at the Duke's house. Because of their awkward position, no one answers the driver. The Duchess, who's waiting outside, feels strange about it too. And so the driver opens the door, but before he can do that, they make a sudden noise to stop the driver from doing that. Then Elle steps out the carriage and greets Amelie, the Duchess. Amelie smiles and asks her to stay for the night because she has always wanted to meet Elle. Suddenly, the driver sees Theo in a rather unfortunate situation with his nose bleeding. This time, Elle has no excuse for that. In the end, she can't save everyone's lives. However, Amelie isn't concerned about that, but why is her son naked at the present time? Elle, good work for saving everyone. Now save yourself. Amelie then turns to Elle and demands an explanation. Inside the mansion, Amelie explains that only a few live inside the residence. That's why the lights are turned off at night. The moment that the servant is out of Amelie's sight, she then asks Elle to be honest. Before Elle can say anything, Amelie assumes that her son is being bullied at work. Amelie has been too anxious since after the inauguration ceremony. Theo left her side and wandered around the world as a knight-errant, so it was difficult to know whether her son was alive or not. But one day, Theo came back because of Elle, so Amelie has been meaning to meet Elle to properly thank her. Then, Amelie leaves her just like that, unable to comprehend anything she discovers. Thanks to the moonlight, Elle can still be able to see well. When she opens a room to stay for the night, she finds Theo inside, widely awake while looking out the window with gloomy eyes. For her, it feels like she's seen something that she shouldn't have. She remembers the day when Theo slaughtered all the other knights. She tried to stop him, but all he said was that he thought Elle was worried about him. Though he was aware that he misunderstood her intentions, he still didn't want to be disrupted. And suddenly, he was in a good mood that day. Did he feel that way because she came for him, or was he satisfied with all the people he killed? That night, Elle dreamt about Francois, but that course suddenly changed. Instead, she sees Theodore, who is trying to lean closer to her again. When she opens her eyes and sees Theo on the bed, lying comfortably beside her, she screams out and panics about it, but Theo means no harm. He then opens the curtains, and the moment he turns around, an evident slap marks his face. What a reflex! Turns out that she keeps calling his name in her dreams. Theo leans closer, asking what on earth did she dream about. Out of embarrassment, she orders him to get out of the room. At breakfast, Amelie and Theo are already there, waiting for Elle to come and join them. Looking at how relaxed Theo is, Elle thinks that it's better if he doesn't remember anything about yesterday. She keeps looking at him, long enough to make the Duchess wonder if something's been troubling her. Of course, she can't say that her son is the one troubling her. Suddenly, a letter arrived from the princess. One is addressed to Elle. Indeed, the princess knows everything. The letter includes an invitation for a pop-up party where everyone is allowed to join regardless of status, and so Elle asks Morris to assist the princess during that time. Also, it was written that Pippin wanted to invite Adelaide to the party, so Elle won't be going. Shortly after, Elle is summoned by their commander to ask about the wine that was stolen last night. I didn't say it was Laverne, but it's definitely her! Kidding aside, the commander breaks the news that Zephyr showed up last night to steal the princess's necklace. Though the necklace wasn't stolen, Zephyr disappeared like the wind. Just how skilled is this person that even the commander failed to catch up to him? At this rate, it's only a matter of time before the reputation of the November Night falls. And so the commander uses the opportunity of attending the party to catch the culprit. And the person who can catch him will be handsomely rewarded with a special 1-year salary. Laverne is beyond disgusted when she sees the rotten bread supposed to be Elle's lunch. She first assumes that her superior is doing poison training, but she is dumbfounded when Elle meticulously explains that she is supposed to eat spoiled food to make her sick. Jeez! First of all, that's disgusting. Second, there's a thing called being too extreme, Elle. Thank God she has to cancel her plan since a year's worth of salary is now on the line. At the mention of the party, Laverne goes off, convincing Elle to take her as her partner. Apparently, she didn't receive a randomized invitation. However, the moment she suggests taking Morris instead, Laverne scurries away. I guess things between her and Morris are still so awkward. Meanwhile, Theodore and Morris are on their way back after Morris stops Theo from threatening the personnel who refuse to give him the books that Elle has requested. He tells Theodore that even if he is royal, he shouldn't threaten people. Theodore then remarks on how lively the atmosphere is, so Morris explains that it is due to the upcoming party with no status restrictions. Morris teases him for not receiving it for a while. However, he voices his concern for Elle because Adelaide is apparently invited, and no doubt her partner will be Francois. Grr, I hate seeing those two. Theodore is taken aback, and he recalls a time when Elle blushingly declared how she really loved Francois during their time as cadets. At the present, Morris emphasizes that she now needs Theodore. Morris wonders if the man understands that the princess wants him to be Elle's partner so that they can get revenge on those traitors. Unsurprisingly, Theodore quite likes the sound of being Elle's partner. Meanwhile, Francois is panicking that he has to attend amidst the fallout of the failed engagement. He keeps on whining about how everyone is avoiding him. Adelaide, on the other hand, is on the verge of tearing out her hair because of how much of an idiot Francois is. I'm not sensing any love here, people. Clearly, this woman is just using him. But to what end? When she notices that he's getting scared because of her reaction, she hugs him. Despite her warm embrace, she vows to send Elle to hell. What did our girl ever do to you? Don't you dare touch her! Elle is lamenting her ever-increasing workload of reports. Someone is certainly slacking off. She enters her office when she sees a rather adorable sight. Theodore is asleep on his desk. So cute! Good thing that he managed to get his work done. She notices that the guy's coat is on the ground, so she picks it up and places it on his shoulder. However, she can't help but be distracted by his angelic face. She reaches out to move some stray hairs off his face. Understandably, when one is this close to someone as gorgeous as Theo, she gets distracted. Her heart is beating loudly as she recalls their almost kiss at the wagon. Suddenly, he speaks and asks her when she is planning to do it. She shrieks because he was actually awake this whole time. Elle, thinking that he is referring to a kiss, denies that she is thinking about anything. However, he calls her a liar and assumes that she wants to take him as her partner to the party. Oops. What were you thinking just a second ago, Elle? Turns out you're the pervert. Nonetheless, she is relieved that he has gotten the wrong idea. Rather than rejecting him outright, she makes a wager with him. She challenges him that if he finishes the pile of work before she does, he will be her partner. Unfortunately for him, he lost. She asks him why he just doesn't ask the princess for an invitation. He argues that he wants everyone to know that she's got a handsome man like him by her side. Wow, his confidence level is up to 100. Elle reminds him that her objective at the party is to get the bonus. To catch Zephyr. Yes, Elle has her priorities sorted. Remembering the princess telling him that Elle really likes money, he mentions the prospect of her receiving a bonus. However, he is taken aback when he learns that she is entertaining the idea because of her family's debt. He then declares that he'll tell a story and she can decide whether or not she'll make him her partner or not. The story is about Adelaide. Before we know it, Theo is running laps when Laverne finds him. When asked why, he replies that he feels awkward staying in the office. Laverne then comments that she thought that Elle rejected her as her partner because she was already thinking of asking Theo. She remarks that even though others see him as a mad dog, she thinks that he just really likes Elle. But then Theodore reminds her of what he did during his knighting ceremony. He tells her that he refused to stand back when others dared to dirty his master's name. Laverne is baffled that this guy killed those people for Dame Elle. The knights are having a training session about catching the Zephyr, and everyone takes notes of how serious the deputy commander is. During their break, Theodore hands Elle some water as he praises her for being the one to capture Zephyr in all the sessions. However, all Elle can think about is how she was only able to do so because of his help. She realizes how capable he is as an aide, not just during training, but in administrative work as well. She figures that she needs to praise him a bit, so she rubs his chin and tells him he did well. I can't believe that he really behaves like a dog. Theo then smugly says that he deserves more than just praise. Anticipating this, Elle tells him how persistent he is about being her partner in the party. However, she is adamant about going alone and merely suggests that she accompany him to the princess later so he can ask for an invitation himself. But Theodore is nothing if not tenacious. He argues that this could be the best way to get revenge on Adelaide, making Elle freeze. Later on, we see them making a quick stop before going to see Elle's palace. When they get down, they are enthusiastically greeted by 3 children. They are greeted by Theo, Laverne, and Morris. 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 They are greeted by She greets them brightly as Theo curiously watches them. Elle buys the rest of the flowers the children are selling. When Theo finally asks her about the children, she begins describing them like how Emma has a sick mother and Enzo used to be a pickpocket who tried to rob her. Apparently, the princess is supporting these children through her. One of the children tugs on Theo's coat and places a flower behind his ear, causing Elle to laugh at his expense. She is removing dirt from one of the children's faces when a voice angrily shouts for her to take her hands off him. He clearly doesn't trust nobles, claiming that they are planning to sell them off somewhere. Elle notes how the boy, Jacques, still doesn't trust anyone. Rather than arguing, she bids them goodbye instead. While walking, Elle confirms Theo's suspicion that Jacques is from the East. Recently, it has been targeted for human trafficking, and Jacques is a victim himself. While Theo removes the flower still on his ear, he comments that the royal family has their work cut out for them. He then places the flower on Elle's ear instead. With a sweet smile, he tells her how the flower's beauty does not compare to her. This guy sure knows how to sweet talk. Stop smiling like that, mister. Understandably, Elle is beyond embarrassed to hear his cringe words and has to turn away to hide her blushing face. Good thing Theo diverts his attention from the flowers and asks what they are for. She answers that it is for the princess and her people. Later on, Princess Pippin is enraged to hear that Dame Elle has visited the palace only to give them the flowers and has not gone to see her. Miss Montherlant reminds her that she did upset Elle. She then turns to her cousin and asks why he's there. Theodore smiles at her playfully and reminds her that they are still family. The princess cringes and demands to know why he is there. Theodore directly asks her why she did not send him an invitation. Pippin answers that he already knows the answer, so Theo speculates that she wants him to go as Elle's partner. However, he informs his cousin that she is wrong this time. He recalls that when he suggested using him to get revenge, Elle straight up rejected the idea, declaring that she would not get revenge since she is a Knight of the Order of November. The princess is devastated that she miscalculated tremendously. She even recalls her aunt's words about not fully understanding men and women. Oh, princess, you may be a genius, but you still have a lot to learn. Because she is miserable, she provokes her cousin by telling him that he's lost his charm. Theo flashes a fake smile and replies that a child like her wouldn't understand that adults have a lot to worry about. Under the table, the two are childishly kicking each other. Despite being royals, they're so rowdy with each other. After deliberating, she decides to give him an invitation under one condition. He must give her an amusing show at the party, a challenge that Theo gladly accepts. Later on, a newcomer arrives. She goes down a carriage, and her attendant reminds her to pace herself. However, she doesn't listen and sprints up the palace stairs. She is panting by the time she reaches Princess Pippin, only to be disappointed Elle has already left the palace. The princess tries to comfort her cousin. The newcomer is the eldest daughter of the Duchess of House Lorraine, Maria Charlotte. She is shy and weak, but she has started a fan club dedicated to Elle. Talk about a diehard fan! When asked what she and Elle talked about, Pippin lies that they talked about their cousin, Theo. Charlotte begins blaming herself because apparently, if she wasn't kidnapped, Theo may have never become Elle's aide. It is revealed that Theodore is crazier than we thought because it turns out that he blackmailed the princess to assign him as Elle's aide by kidnapping their sickly cousin. OMG! What is wrong with you, Theo? Seeing her cousin being depressed, Pippin cheers her up by asking her to deliver the macarons she has her people make to Elle. Pippin is blushing and shocked when she hears the princess. Charlotte arrives at the order and is enthusiastically received by the knights. However, she hurriedly makes her way to Elle's office. When she's about to open the door to Elle's office, she hears an alarming sound. She hurriedly walks in and is horrified to see Elle on top of Theo on the floor. Charlotte menacingly stares at Theo and demands he get away from Elle. Later on, Charlotte is sobbing nonstop as Elle tries to calm her down. Theodore is no help at all because he only mocks his cousin, so Elle sends him away. Elle is actually quite thankful that Charlotte has interrupted something dangerous earlier. Although, not the same danger we originally thought. Earlier, Theo is cleaning her desks and comes across a book called 100 Ways to Seduce the Opposite Sex. Elle desperately explains that she was just tasked to make out a report about it. However, Theo being Theo makes fun of her and lifts the book out of her reach. The two crash to the ground due to their unruliness. That is how Charlotte found them in that position. Unknown to them, the Zephyr is able to get his hands on an invitation, which means that it is his chance to finally catch up to his failure to snatch up the princess's necklace. Suddenly, he hears some knights talking about the apparent bonus to be given to the knight who catches him. With a mad look in his eyes, he decides to mess with them. The commander of the Order of November is beyond frustrated. He takes it out on his advisor, who is also his nephew, for not being able to come up with a way to catch the Zephyr. What if Zephyr doesn't even show up at the party? Morris confidently tells him that the thief will certainly show up. He declares that Zephyr is predictable because the guy attacks to get the attention. The commander also speculates that they are dealing with someone with a hero complex. Meanwhile, Elle has taken Charlotte to the gate so she can board her carriage. Charlotte is flustered as she tells her that she had so much fun. Right before she leaves, Charlotte asks if Elle is attending the party, and when she gets her confirmation, she worries because Elle's ex-fiance and his new partner are attending. She takes Elle's hand and promises that she will protect her no matter what. In her carriage, Charlotte is gushing because of Elle when she notices that Theodore is in front of her. Theo tells her to be quiet, so she nervously obeys out of fear. Theo asks her if she really likes Elle so much. Charlotte recalls how Elle has helped her back then and declares firmly that she does like Elle. Despite his initial surprise, Theo comments that she finally stood up to him. Charlotte demands that he does not cause trouble for Elle. Theodore laughs and leans towards her, taking a handful of her hair. He informs her that he is actually putting his life on the line for Elle. He declares that he is upset that even though she claims to like Elle, she's not willing to do the same. He expresses how willing he is to die to protect Elle. Jeez, how intense! After that, Theo steps out and has a confrontation with Andre, Charlotte's knight. Threats have been made, and Charlotte tells Andre that he can't hurt Theo. Surprisingly, Theodore mysteriously refers to Charlotte as a kidnapper as well. How weird is this family? What do you mean that Charlotte is a kidnapper? Upon his return, Theo is met with quite a sight. Everyone is in disarray, especially his master, because Zephyr has the audacity to mock them. He has left a message on their wall taunting the Order to catch him. Laverne, Elle, and Theo are exhausted trying to find a clue about the Zephyr using the die he used on the wall of the Order. Unfortunately, due to bad luck and violent actions from both Laverne and Theo, their efforts are all for naught because they managed to not get a single clue. Theodore comments that the store owner from earlier doesn't want Zephyr to be caught. He even comments about the thief being a commoner. With a serious face, Laverne asks him what is wrong about being a commoner. On their way home, Elle tells Theo that he misspoke earlier and that Laverne is a commoner herself. She reminds him that he'll be upset as well if he is judged because of his class. Theo accepts that he is rude, and so Elle tells him to talk to Laverne. She then asks him if he is returning to their estate, and he confirms this because he needs to prepare for the party. At the mention of it, she is reminded that she'll see Francois and Adelaide during the party. She recalls all the times she has worn dresses just to make him happy. But it was all for nothing. She turns away from Theo, but he calls out to her. He kneels in front of her, and taking her hand, he kisses it and permits her to use him to her heart's content. She encases his face with her hands and thanks him sincerely. For the sake of those who care for her, she'll be fine. While a meeting is being held by the commander regarding the capture of Zephyr, Morris is looking at the written words still on the wall. He thinks that if it was a knight who did it, their clothes would have been more stained by the dye. His recent actions are becoming more unusual, and Morris can't figure out what changed. Suddenly, he sees some scattered grass growing within the cracks of the paved ground. That is when he realizes something. In the orphanage, Jacques is not pleased to learn that Enzo has hidden the invitation to the party addressed to him and the other children. This Enzo kid is so suspicious. I get a certain creepy vibe from him. He reminds Jacques that they will only be mocked if they attend. However, Jacques insists on going because he wants to help Zephyr since he helped the orphanage as well, claiming that he is a hero. Morris is already at the party and he is confident that they will catch Zephyr. However, he is still unsure how they will find him amongst all these people. Suddenly, he hears screaming at the entrance. Theodore has arrived, and boy does he look dashing. No wonder those girls are beside themselves. Gosh, why does he have to show up like that? This is illegal. Morris begins to talk to Theo when he gets distracted. There, at a distance, is Laverne looking beautiful in her dress. He is taken aback for a moment, but he turns back to Theo, who's already distracted himself. But not in a similar manner. He is glaring at Francois and Adelaide. He is about to put on the show that he's promised the princess, but Morris stops him, asking him to wait for Elle. Princess Pippin arrives moments later and starts the party. Both the nobility and the common people are enjoying themselves. After a while, Elle has arrived, and she is not wearing any fancy dress. No. She is wearing the uniform of the Order of 13th Moon, the Royal Guard. Everyone watches as Elle kneels in front of the princess and asks her for the first dance. Of course, Pippin giddily accepts. The other girls watch as the two dance on the floor, and they remark how charming Elle is. Pippin herself tells Elle that she looks like a prince and that everyone is staring at her. The princess then glances at our most hated couple, and she deviously smirks at them. She now understands the revenge that Elle wants. It is by outshining those two. Watching them, Theo learns that Elle is showing everyone who Elle de Blois is. When the princess and Elle are done, other maidens bombard Elle with requests for a dance. Elle is forced to promise to dance with them when they begin fighting amongst themselves. Later on, Charlotte approaches her as well, asking for a dance. Meanwhile, Morris is with Theo. Theodore marvels at being ignored at an event like this, and Morris explains that Charlotte is the only one to stay besides Elle during the events like this. Theo sees Charlotte flash him a smirk and figures that this is her payback. He is about to suggest some plan to Morris so that he can get Charlotte away from his master when he notices that Morris is once again distracted. Some guy is asking Laverne to dance. Remembering that he had offended Laverne last time, he pushes Morris to her direction so he can ask her to dance. Suddenly, the song changes and everyone recognizes it as the tone that Adelaide excels in. She drags Francois with her to the dance floor with a determined expression. Elle watches the two. She doesn't want to engage in pity revenge, but she can't help but make her way to Theo. She asks if he minds if she uses him. Leaning to whisper in her ear, he tells her to give him an order instead. He kneels in front of her, and she orders him. She will use him from that moment forth. The two dance in front of everyone. However, Elle is frustrated that her gaze still drifts to Francois. She thought she was fine, but apparently not. Sensing how stiff she is, he tells her that her focus should be on him. However, Theo flinches when he sees tears falling down her cheeks. She is trying hard to be okay, but there is still a part of her that can't move on from him. At that moment, Theo reaches out to embrace her, hiding her crying face in his chest. She is glad that Theodore is here. He tells her that she can cry all she wants and no one will see her. OMG, I love how protective he is of his master. Remembering the decades she has loved Francois, she asks Theo if he thinks that time truly heals all wounds. To her surprise, he kisses her forehead and tells her that she doesn't have to wait for too long since she already has the handsomest dog in the world. We can hardly blame him for being confident. He is handsome. Elle, on the other hand, is flustered that he did that in front of everybody. We now go to Francois' perspective, and boy, is he pathetic. He watches how Elle is comfortable with Theo. He has assumed that her feelings for him will never change, and now he even has the audacity to feel betrayed. He is so self-centered. You're not all that, mister. Adelaide is getting humiliated when Francois stops dancing with her in favor of staring at Elle. She is livid, so she leaves and rushes outside. She had assumed that the broken engagement would have buried Elle by now, but that is not the case. When she reaches the balcony, she figures that she has to bring Elle down herself. Taking out a small bottle, she pours it into a wine glass. What are you doing? You wouldn't dare. At that moment, Elle joins her on the balcony, wanting to speak to her. The two-faced woman turns back and answers that she's been meaning to see Elle as well. As Laverne is walking outside the party's venue, an unfamiliar man walks towards her, telling her that he's been looking for her for such a long time, and even asks for permission to stay with her before the party is over. However, before she can even reply, Morris arrives worriedly, asking her if she has a lot to drink. Laverne immediately denies it. Morris is relieved that she did not drink at all, since it's chaos whenever she's drunk. Apparently, he thinks that she confesses to men when she's drunk and has done so to Duke Morris 56 times already. Her face turns red upon learning this. She has no idea at all. The moment they finish their chit-chat, they proceed to enter the party in order to fulfill their mission. 56 times? That's crazy! Laverne should never drink ever again. Meanwhile, after Elle leaves, Theodore immediately runs and looks for her. He knows that if he doesn't find Elle right away, Adele will surely do something to harm her. So, despite the ladies trailing behind him, he still looks for her. Meanwhile, at the terrace, Elle is sitting across from Adele at one table. The tension is high when suddenly Elle opens her mouth. She starts to narrate a story about a princess who's enjoying luxury and its people who are begging the god of death to grant them death. Listening to it makes Adele furious. But why? Simple. It's all because she's the princess in that story. She's the sixth daughter of the king of Aquitaine. What's happening in Aquitaine, Adele's kingdom, is exactly the same. Because of the excessive amount of tax, people are slowly dying. What they did to their kingdom speaks a lot about what they are. The fact that Aquitaine failed in the territory war with Blois is because the people no longer wish to protect such a kingdom. Adele furiously stands, telling Elle that she's the descendant of the Aquitaine family who were driven to war and ruin by the great former Countess Victoire Blois for the simple refusal of marriage. Witnessing what Adele's saying, Elle realizes that Theodore was right when he told her that Adele has always been harboring resentment towards her. It must be so painful to be betrayed by someone you consider a friend. Elle stares at her as she briefly explains that what the former Countess did was for the many. Her goal was to exert authority over Aquitaine through marriage. She greatly wished to rescue the citizens of Aquitaine who were suffering from their higher taxes. With so much anger in her voice, Adele shouts her resentment to Elle, telling her how much the people who remain in the kingdom have to suffer because of Blois' selfish desire. But then, Adele suddenly shuts up when Elle tells her that she has a huge debt hanging on her. After the dreadful war, the former Countess of Blois took a huge part of the city's restoration, but it was to no avail. After 3 generations, Elle is still working to pay off that debt. See? Despite what happened, the former Countess still offered money to restore that kingdom. A shocked expression starts to show on Adele's face. She is not aware that the House of Blois has any kind of debt going on. But then in the back of her mind, she thought, what's the use of knowing about those now? Despite all that, she pretends to act sorry and even apologizes to Elle for the way she reacted, telling her that she regrets taking out her resentment on her. Such a traitor! Elle, being the kind of person that she is, opens up to Adele that she wants a clear air between the two of them. She really sees Adele as her friend and still wants her to be, since Adele is the very first person that she considers her friend. Wanting to pursue her plan of poisoning Elle, Adele continues to act passionately in fixing their friendship. However, Elle isn't really that clueless. Being with Adele for 10 years taught her a lot of things about Adele. She knows that when Adele is anxious, she starts touching her hair like she is right now. Before drinking it, she leaves some remarkable words to Adele, telling her that there hasn't been a moment that she didn't consider her a friend. You can never lie to Elle, Adele. The moment her lips touch the glass, Theodore appears out of nowhere where he witnesses Adele slapping the glass away from Elle. Adele stands up and shouts at her that she never considers Elle as her friend. Theodore is furious. He immediately runs towards Adele. He is on the verge of swinging his sword, attempting to kill Adele when Elle stops him. She then tells him not to kill Adele and to never kill anyone without her permission. In the end, it's still a shock for him how kind-hearted Elle is. Despite her ex-friend wanting to kill her, she still has a soft spot for her and still can't bear to hurt her the way she does to her. Adele, you really don't deserve her. At the party's food section, Enzo seems to be so fond of seeing a lot of food while Jacques is taking care of the kids. Enzo gets curious the moment his eyes land at something. A bottle of alcohol. Well, he doesn't know that it's alcohol at all and just thinks that it's a normal drink. Before he can try, Elle appears all of a sudden and tells him to wait a few more years before he can have some since he's still a minor. When she sees who's beside Enzo, she's surprised and happy at the same time to see that it's Jacques. She tells him how glad she is to see him there, but Jacques remains cold and silent. Despite receiving a cold shoulder, Elle still hopes that he will loosen up and eventually open his heart to them. Elle is so sweet. She really wants to help them. In the middle of their get-together, the kids shout excitedly when Theodore appears. They start to run and give him hugs. He seems like he's popular with kids, huh? But not long after that, a cadet walks toward them to remind them about their mission, when all of a sudden, someone from the guests shouts that someone has stolen her bracelet. This gives them a huge advantage of locking up the doors to search everyone. Meanwhile, outside the party's venue, Francois is following Adele, asking her the reason for the way she's acting. Adele snaps at him, asking him if he still feels something for Elle and if he now regrets leaving Elle for her. She begins to question his love for her because if he really loves her, he would have followed her when she ran off. Francois doesn't know what to say other than he thinks that Adele is acting weird. The Adele he knows doesn't get angry. What kind of person doesn't get angry? How can he be so clueless? Adele feels pathetic hearing those words from him. She isn't some saint to not get angry at all. None of those ever mattered now since she never truly loved him. She only used him for her plans, which are now ruined the moment Elle told her that she doesn't want anything to do with Francois. She then turns around and leaves Francois in shock with all the revelations. Both of you deserve to get hurt because of those betrayals. Meanwhile, at the back of the huge tree, Laverne and Morris have witnessed all of those things happen. They're both in shock by what Adele did, especially how she plots all of those things to Elle. Despite how much they want to tell people, Morris asks Laverne to refrain from doing so to not cause havoc. While they're talking, a banana peel suddenly falls on Laverne, making her furious. There's a man at the tree branch. She angrily gets the banana peel and throws it to the man. When the man gets down from the tree, he's immediately shocked to see Laverne. Laverne immediately thinks that it's some kind of tactic, but the man introduces himself as her childhood friend Andre. The moment she hears that, she immediately remembers. He's the kid from the Mohel Merchant Company. She's happy to see that he's all grown up now, but then she remembers how tragic his life has been considering that their company went bankrupt and his parents died. However, Andre just smiles at her, assuring her that he's all good since Lady Charlotte takes care of him. Meanwhile, in the back of Morris's mind, he suspects that Andre purposely dropped the banana peel to shift their attention. He thinks that Andre must have a hidden agenda. In the middle of their chit-chat, Morris's colleague appears looking tense. He asks them to go to the ball right away since the real Zephyr appeared at the party. All of them are in shock, including Andre. At the party, all of the guests are panicking since their jewelry is missing. Elle commands every night to start checking up on every guest for them to know who the thief is, but then a marquis starts to make a scene by shoving off a knight's hand, telling him that he's a noble and no commoner should ever dare to touch him. Guests start murmuring things because of what happened. Some of them even think that it's unfair to search all the guests just to find a few pieces of jewelry. Looking at the scene, the princess grins. At the back of her mind, she thinks that things are starting to get out of hand. What will Elle do now? Elle's blood boils, so she quickly gets a glass of wine. She walks towards the man and pours a glass of wine on him. She pushes the man's face on the table, making him squeak. It's already clear that he refused the protection of the knights, so she warned him to not go in search of it later on. Elle looks at the guests and announces that if they're confident enough to defend themselves, they may decline to be searched. The discrimination against commoners is so bad here. While the guests are being searched, the princess asks Elle what to do next, since the things are starting to get complicated, even though the princess herself lost her necklace. Elle's eyes widened. How could the princess's necklace be stolen? Meanwhile, outside the party, Theodore hears someone crying. It's Francois. They get into an argument. Francois provokes Theodore, telling him that Elle will never have feelings for him and that he'll always be number 2. This doesn't sit well for Theodore, so he punches Francois and stamps on his face. Francois cries out in pain, but Theo merely looks at him and warns him to never show his face in front of Elle ever again, or else he might do something worse. Theo can be so scary, even though he can look like an adorable puppy sometimes. Back at the party, Elle still can't comprehend what happened. She thinks that since the princess stays on the second floor after dancing with her, she'll be out of harm, but she's clearly wrong. Out of nowhere, a man shouts, saying that he knows who the thief is, and points to Enzo. Enzo denies all of it, but then the man says that he saw Enzo approaching the princess when he was wiping off her dress when he accidentally stepped on it. This mystery is driving me insane too. What is the truth? The men proceed to hold Enzo while Jacques is begging them to let go of him. Elle's about to shout for them to let go, but then she remembers Enzo's past. He was a pickpocket, so there's also a possibility that they're right. She's torn on what to do since Enzo is pleading for her help. All of a sudden, the princess asks for him to get executed immediately. What? This shocks all of them. Even the knights are all surprised by the princess's decision. It's so unlikely for her to rush into that. Elle is left with no choice but to execute Enzo, and Enzo has no choice but to accept his fate. Just when Elle's about to execute him, a guy appears telling her to stop. Who could it be? Could it be the real Zephyr? Jacques stood up, telling everyone how they speak of quality and fairness, but in the end, they don't think twice about killing a kid like Enzo because he's a poor and powerless orphan. It turns out, he's the real Zephyr. As the knights are about to get him, he warns them that he'll kill himself and they won't be able to find their jewelry anymore. That doesn't scare Elle, but before she can go to Jacques, Enzo grabs her and begs her to stop. The other knights are also busy dealing with other kids that are stopping them. Elle has no choice but to let Theodore take over in capturing Jacques. As Jacques is escaping, some commoners are helping him get away in return for his help towards them. Before he can go out, he throws an arrow at the chandelier above the princess to shift the attention of the knights because he knows that the princess will always be their first priority. As he's running toward the end, he reminds himself that he has to live. he has to endure so he can help more commoners. He can't be arrested. He still has a lot of things to do. He has been through a lot. The rain starts pouring, and the moment he arrives at the exit, Theodore's already there. He's flabbergasted. How does he know that he'll go there? Suddenly, Morris also appears with a smile on his face. Seems like he knows all of these will happen, from Jacques going to that ball up to where he's going to exit. There's no doubt that Morris knows all of that. After the chandelier falls in front of the princess, an unwanted memory appears in her mind, making her feel those familiar tense feelings once again. She closes her eyes as her palms are on her ears, not wanting to hear anything. She only mutters a name. Elle. She wants Elle to be with her and to protect her. By the moment Elle comes to her rescue, she hugs her like a kid who doesn't want to be taken away from her mother. Back on Jacques' situation, Theodore and Morris have him cornered. Before he can even say something, he saw Theodore hit him with the hilt of his sword, making him unconscious. Jacques wakes up at the prison cell only to see Elle and the other knights where he is questioned. But he won't cooperate, so Elle is left with no choice but to drag the orphanage into it, making Jacques furious and calling her a hypocrite just like the other nobles. Elle doesn't really care what he says about her at all. All she cares about is those people that she swore to protect, especially the princess. Elle then asks the knight to transfer Jacques to a different place for his punishment. However, it's not the punishment she's thinking about. Instead of putting him in the guillotine, Elle sent him to the Order of November, where he will be training as a knight. What a turn of events! There, she will be able to watch him, unlike on the outside where he isn't safe from the bourgeois. She sees a great skill from Jacques, and she realizes how much he wants to help people. He's even more touched when the other knights tell him that she put in her reward money and even borrowed some just so she can bail him out and send him to train. He's lucky Elle's the one who caught him. Tears start to form in his eyes. He doesn't understand at all why she did that. He thought all nobles were hypocrites, so why did she go to such lengths for him? Late at night, Elle seems to be nervous and uncomfortable. It's because she invited Theo to stay at her house for the night since they finished their job late. Elle feels even more nervous since it's her first time bringing a man into her room. A couple of moments later, Elle hears the bathroom door open. She feels relief that he's finally done. However, when she looks at him, her face starts to redden. Who wouldn't blush when a handsome man stands in front of you wearing only a bathrobe? He's so hot. Back at Elle's bedroom, it's decided that both of them will occupy the bed because Theo has never slept on the floor. He refuses to let Elle do so. That is how she finds herself lying beside a man for the first time. After a while, she recalls all the times he's helped her. Elle has this urge to tap him from the back and thank him for all that he's done for her. After doing so, she sits up. However, he also does the same and announces that he'll just sleep on the floor. It turns out that he can't sleep properly since he keeps getting naughty thoughts of her. This makes Elle blush. Theodore sits beside her and asks her if she likes him or not, so he won't be able to cross lines the next time. Elle answers him that it's not like she doesn't like him. She still just isn't so sure. But with that, Theo kisses her without any warning. OMG! It's happening, guys! The events that follow is one that Theodore swears he will remember even if she decides to leave him. However, he hopes to keep her in his arms for all eternity. And with that, the two share their first night together. The following morning, Theodore wakes up without Elle by his side. Turns out that she goes to their office at 4 a.m. in the morning since she can't sleep after what happened. At Elle's office, she's talking with Laverne about what happened, but refers to herself as her friend. In the middle of their conversation, Theodore went in together with Morris. Elle is so stunned that she jumps out of the window. Unfortunately, Theo immediately follows her. Seeing Elle's behavior towards him makes Theo think that she must not have liked what happened. That's why he forces himself to tell her that it's all his fault, and to just forget about it. This only makes Elle feel emptiness in her heart. Does he really mean it? Is it really that easy to forget? Ideas are appearing in her mind when suddenly Theo pulls her and hugs her. Turns out that a sword fell and could easily slash Elle in a second. He hugs her tightly as memories from the past start to resurface. He will never allow Elle to get hurt or disappear ever again. Another mystery? What happened in the past? On a sunny day, Andre notices that a girl with short orange hair, together with other people, has arrived at Charlotte's home. With a smile, they say that they wanted to be a member of Elle, Elle's fan club. Meanwhile, Theodore enters Elle's office only to find a lot of documents that Elle expects him to do, which is unusual. Theodore thinks that maybe that's Elle's way of revenge because he told her to forget about what happened between them. He confirms it the moment Elle tells him that she isn't childish enough to do revenge. It's pretty clear on her face that she's sulking. Theodore smiles because it means that Elle doesn't regret what happened between them. He wants to hug her, but he's afraid that she'll run away again if he rushes things. While they are talking and teasing each other in the office, a knight comes in and reports that there's a new case of murder. When they go to the scene, the murdered person is the short, orange-haired girl who went to Lady Charlotte's house. Elle notices how tense Theo looks. It's unusual. She gives him a handkerchief, but then Theo holds her hand tightly. He has never been like that, so she assures him that the case will be solved right away. Even though he denies it, Theodore thinks that given the way of killing and the apple that's left beside the girl's body, only one person can do this. The person who wants Elle to be dead. Snow White's evil queen. At the orphanage, smiles flash on the kids' faces as they see Jacques visiting them. They are all overjoyed to see him once again, especially in knight uniform. Jacques asks how they are and if Enzo still does his treatment even with him not around. Elle took care of him and the other kids who were in need of treatment. Jacques also finds out that they had always known that he was Zephyr. At the Knight's headquarters, Morris, together with Laverne, Elle, and Theodore, are looking for some documents to get some clues about the recent murder. Laverne can't help but feel jealous of Elle and Theodore's sweetness. She wants to experience it too, but the only person who's linked with her, Morris, is too caught up with the documents that he's been reading. Out of nowhere, Theodore opens up about a similar case that he encountered before. All of a sudden, Laverne holds Elle's hand and drags her somewhere while Theodore is with Morris. They're going to go in disguise as normal citizens to get some clues. That way, it'll be easier for them to know about what happened. After changing into some clothes, Theodore is in awe the moment he sees Elle in such pretty clothes. It's rare for Elle to wear elegant dresses, and she looks extra pretty in them. Elle held his arms and told Theodore to start to disguise themselves as a couple. As expected, he willingly agrees. They're so cute! Elle drools as she looks at those delicious-looking pastries. Suddenly, she snaps back to reality and asks Theo if he's certain that they'll find a clue there. Suddenly, Theo gets closer to her, making her heart beat so fast. He assures her that they will find some clue since Aunt Sophie often goes to that restaurant. The both of them finally sit down as Theo starts saying that he's sad since work's still in her mind despite them being on a date. This blows Elle's mind since they're definitely working. When the waitress arrives and gives them their order, Theo suddenly starts feeding her. Elle thinks that it's insane. However, despite how embarrassing it is, she still eats it and tries to act as pleasant as possible. In an attempt to make Theodore shut up, she tries to get the fork and feed him back, but Theo drops it and accidentally puts some icing on his hands. He licks it and also puts some icing on Elle's nose. Elle looks shocked, but Theodore has this strange idea, thinking that the icing would taste better if he eats it that way. In an instant, he moves forward and licks it from Elle's nose, making her face turn red. What? Theo, what behavior is this? Walking on the streets, Laverne tells Jacques about the homicide that happened 12 years ago and asks him to warn his friends from the orphanage about it. As they're talking and ranting, they see Andre helping Monica, who seemed to be so attracted to Andre. Monica's asking Andre to have dinner when Laverne suddenly joins the conversation and asks Monica if they can join too. All of a sudden, Jacques weirdly sniffs him around. Laverne, on the other hand, pulls him away, but Jacques thinks that it's weird. Andre doesn't have a smell, even a body odor. Jacques finds this really weird. This makes Andre laugh awkwardly. Monica thinks they're both being funny and invites them over to dinner. She asks Andre again too, but then he declines since he has some errands to do. When Monica and Laverne are about to go inside, Jacques realizes that Monica is a bourgeois, and for sure he'll be in trouble if he goes with them. He then wears his hood and tells them that he won't be eating. Laverne, realizing the situation, excuses herself from Monica and follows Jacques. Meanwhile, back in the restaurant, the moment Elle and Theo step outside, they see Francois. Sitting in the room, the princess is surprised that Duchess Claremont suddenly arrives without notice. It turns out that she came straight to her just to inform her that she feels like Elle and Theo are going to be married very soon since she saw them together. However, the princess already knows what she means. It seems like Duchess Claremont misunderstood the situation and got the wrong idea about their undercover patrol. Out of the blue, Duchess Claremont asks why she's not holding any apples. She laughs it off and says that she's not feeling it. But the truth is, she heard that there was an apple on the homicide site. It's hard to simply brush it off as a coincidence. Now she can't help but get a bad feeling about eating one. Meanwhile, Francois looks shocked seeing Elle, but as soon as he snaps out of reality, he explains how dumb he is and how he regrets breaking up with her, and asks Elle for one more chance. Theo grits his teeth out of anger, telling him how dare he show up despite his warning. He's about to attack Francois when Elle suddenly acts like she doesn't know Francois and holds Theo's hands as they walk away. As soon as they're away from Francois, Theo worries as he feels her shaking, but then she looks at him and laughs because of how dumb Francois looks. She's glad to see how much of a fool he truly is. Seeing the look on Elle's face, Theo suddenly feels the urge to hug her right at that moment. But he wants to make sure that she likes him. When he's about to ask her, Elle notices something strange in the water. Meanwhile, as Laverne and Jacques are eating, Elle and Theo arrive. Laverne immediately asks how their date was, but Elle protests instantly, emphasizing that it was an undercover mission. When Elle sees Jacques, she praises him for behaving and for not using the patrol as an excuse to sneak away. She pats his head, but when she turns to Laverne and Theo, they're waiting for her to pat his head too. Thinking that they'll continue to ask if she'll do it once, Elle clears her throat and tells him that they're going home. Meanwhile, Andre stares intensely at Lady Charlotte and asks if she's sure that she won't be going with him. But she assures him that she's all right, and if anything happens, she'll call Elle's assistance immediately. Andre's a little sad having to be apart from her, so he asks her to hug him to make him feel better, which she gladly does. She hugs him tight as she bids her goodbyes. The rest of them are unaware that in a place surrounded by darkness and the quiet night, one person is begging for help, trying to escape her death. Early in the morning, Laverne is already ranting about how she has to be paired with Jacques again, when suddenly, Mrs. Golly runs towards her, crying because Monica has been murdered. In the discussion room, Elle is with Maurice, Theo, and Commander. They discuss the death of Monica Golly, 15 years old. Her body was discovered around 6 a.m., and her parents asked Laverne for help, after which she reported the incident herself. She then asks for a day off since she's still in shock, considering that the victim was her childhood friend. The West District has seen 2 homicide cases in a span of 1 week, and it seems like these 2 cases were done by one individual, since both of the victims were killed in the same way. Both of them were strangled based on the bruising around their neck. The killer likely used both hands, and in both crime scenes, the criminal left a green apple. However, in Monica Golly's case, she was murdered inside her home, but there were no signs of forced entry, so it's likely that the perpetrator was an acquaintance. In other words, after putting all the information together, Theo reveals that the killer will definitely come back because the Queen is imitating the story of Snow White. All of them are confused by what he means by the term Queen. He is using that term to refer to the criminal behind the recent serial homicide case in the district. The story goes on with the Queen using an apple to kill Snow White, and this Queen targets young girls, leaving an apple with a single bite in it. And it seems like the killer might commit 7 murders to match the fairy tales. They have to stop the 5 murders no matter what. Ugh, the killer seems to be in their Walt Disney core. After the meeting, Elle's about to go check with the princess when suddenly Theo stops her. She tries to go, but Theo explains that if she goes, it will just add anxiety to the princess, making her overthink that she'll be the next target. And not to mention, the reason for the Queen to leave an apple is to ridicule the princess. The princess is supposed to be Snow White after all. This makes Elle realize that as the princess's guardian knight, she can't keep calm. If Theo didn't stop her, she'd be playing into the Queen's hands. Thinking about what she just did, she apologizes and thanks Theo for calling her out. Suddenly, Theo's bubbly personality arises as he giggles and moves closer to her, asking her to praise him more. But she brushes it off, asking him to have dinner with her instead. Meanwhile, Laverne is sitting on the floor, still in pain from what happened to her friend. As she reminisced about their memories, she suddenly heard someone talking outside her house. The moment she opens the door, she sees Elle helping Theo and Maurice, who's already on the floor holding some veggies. This puts a smile on Laverne's sad face. After dinner, Maurice walks around the dining room and sees a letter and card. Laverne shares that it's Monica's. As soon as Elle sees it, she quickly realizes that they saw something like that on the water yesterday. She then asks what the card is for. It turns out that it's the membership card for Lady Charlotte's AILE. Elle is clueless to what the meaning of it is. Suddenly, Theo, who is playing with her hair, tells her that it means always I love Elle. It's her own fan club, and she doesn't remember it. However, it's not impossible that the club is connected to this case, since the 2 girls who just died are included in this club. Suddenly, Laverne tells them about the strange rumor that she hears about Lady Charlotte. Apparently, in Lorraine Estate, there's a room that even maids are not allowed in. Some even claim that they heard screams coming from it. In order to fully investigate what happened, despite how embarrassing it is for Elle, she encourages them to join AILE. Laverne and Theo got into AILE. They are greeted by the bubbly members. However, they didn't expect to see all the merch with Elle's face in there. They even have a life-size pillow. Suddenly, Charlotte arrives looking surprised to see Theo. The other members explain that he's a new member, but Charlotte doesn't want that and asks him to leave since it's not allowed to have a male member there. Theo stands up, but before he leaves, he stops beside her. With a low voice, he whispers that he knows that the two girls who died are part of her club, and it seems strange that she has no guardian knight even in a time like this. He also reveals that her guardian knight is one of the suspects and the place where she's under investigation. Hearing all this leaves Charlotte in shock. It's as if her soul left her body as she turns pale. As soon as Theo returns to the headquarters, Elle asks him why he got home so early if he got in. Theo replies that he got cast out. When Elle properly looks at him, she sees the human-sized pillow of hers. Theo quickly explains that he got it from the club and plans to keep it in his bedroom, but Elle immediately rips it apart, looking madly embarrassed by it. In the carriage, looking at Elle, Theo has some thoughts running in his mind. As the homicide happens faster than he thought, he can't help but question himself if he can even protect her. He thinks of telling her the truth, but wonders if she will even believe him. However, he knows that even if she doesn't, she'll see his sincerity and will try her best to understand. But just when he's about to say it, they arrive. The moment they step out of the carriage, he realizes that they're in a cemetery. It turns out that Elle made a gravestone for the victims, even though they don't have an official funeral because of the investigation, just so they will be remembered. Knowing Elle, who has a big heart, Theo tries his best to be someone who she can share sorrows with. Meanwhile, in the middle of her conversation with the members, Laverne excuses herself to go to the bathroom. But instead of going there, she tries to go to the strange room. However, before she can enter, Charlotte arrives. This doesn't stop her, so she continues to open the door. The moment she opens the door, it's filled with gifts for AILE and a portrait of Charlotte and Elle. Surely Laverne isn't expecting her to like Elle this much. She seems obsessed. Blood Moon appears, and the princess seems so anxious that Elle isn't there. She tries to sleep and dreams about what happened 5 years ago. It was the time when she was complaining to Charlotte about being stuck in the house. She was bored and couldn't do anything, but then with a malicious expression, Charlotte helped her to escape. She taught her how to escape and told her that the guard knight, Andre, would be waiting for her outside. But as soon as the princess went out, she didn't go to Andre and roamed around the city instead. That's where she was kidnapped, which led to Elle saving her. Suddenly, she wakes up, asking Elle for help, but by the time she looks to her side, Elle is there sleeping. Elle will always be there. While Theo is having breakfast with Duchess Claremont, his mind is somewhere else. It turns out that he's thinking about what happened in his past life when Elle was falsely accused. He is determined not to let that happen. While Duchess Claremont continues to ask him some questions, he just agrees to it when suddenly, he unwittingly agrees to her to send word about his and Elle's wedding to the Knights' headquarters. Upon investigating the case, the Knights immediately removed Andre's name as a suspect since it was proved that he had nothing to do with it. This is a huge relief for him. Now he can continue to go east and investigate those ships that have been used in human trafficking. Meanwhile, Elle and Theo are in Duchess Claremont's house since they're invited for lunch. It seems like the Duchess really mistakenly thought of them liking each other. As the Duchess asks Elle to try on some wedding dresses, Theo starts on thinking about what happened to Lorraine's estate 5 years ago. He saw it himself, young girls being killed the same way in the present. It seems like that even before, the killer used those girls as practice for the bigger plan. Suddenly, Elle appeared wearing Duchess Claremont's wedding dress. It surprises Theo since Elle is just so beautiful. Seeing her dress being worn by Elle makes Duchess Claremont remember her wedding day, still hoping that her husband may return. But Theo bursts those hopes of her, telling her the truth that his father will never return. He also clarifies that he and Elle are merely subordinates. As soon as they leave the place, Theo apologizes, but Elle tells him there's nothing to apologize for since that situation made her reflect on her actions more, claiming that he has been unfocused because of different emotions that she's been feeling. Theo admits that he doesn't regret what happened between them and that he genuinely likes her. However, it's too late. Elle already feels like he's been playing with her emotions. Piles of paper await them since Elle compiled all of the names and addresses of minor girls who can be targeted by the killer. It seems to be impossible for the Knights to protect all of those girls since there are a lot. As soon as Theo reads those names, something clicks in. He remembers some of the names, although he doesn't remember the surnames. He knows something that can definitely help them. He then looks at his teammates and suggests that the Order of November can help them predict those possible victims. All of a sudden, the hot-headed commander enters the room. He received word from the higher-ups, which is why he's acting like that. He orders all of them to put in more effort than before and to begin intense training. This means that no one's allowed to go home, not until they catch the killer. Laverne asks Theo to stop the commander, but knowing that this means that they'll live together, Theo agrees to it since this will give him a chance to make it up to Elle. Elle's about to go to sleep when she notices that someone's sleeping in her bed. At first, she thinks that it's Laverne. However, when the person looks at her, she realizes that it's Theo. Oh God, he's so hot here. Makes me want to steal him from Elle. Human trafficking ships are now discovered by Commander Blanche, when suddenly they see a woman wearing a purple dress talking with a sailor. He approaches the woman, seeing the sailor treat her with respect. It seems like she's knowledgeable about ships. He then asks the woman to reveal who the owner of the ship is, but Blanche is already facing the owner right now. Meanwhile, the commander suddenly shows up looking for Maurice. Luckily, Theo's quick to hide Elle from him. Suddenly, the commander notices that Theo's stomach is quite big, as if he's hiding something in there. Nervousness slowly eats them up. They can't be seen or else issues may arise. Luckily, the commander's a bit dense. He easily shrugs it off, saying that he should just exercise more. Elle's about to go, but Theo stops her. He wants to talk to her about what happened since he hasn't been okay for days. Elle asks why she's a master to him and why he suddenly disappeared after the night ceremony. She has a lot of questions. However, Theo still can't answer her. Elle concludes that since he doesn't trust her, she can't trust him either. She has been unfocused and confused because of her feelings, but Theo looks at her with sincerity and asks her to at least try. He holds her hand and places it on his chest, asking her if she's willing to try again to see if he regrets anything or not. After having a conversation with Blanche, the woman quickly realizes that there must be something fishy that's been going on and she has to investigate it herself. On the terrace, Maurice and Laverne seem to be so awkward with each other. Laverne tries to strike up a conversation, which ends up with Maurice's non-stop chatter without realizing what he's been saying. Looking at Maurice, Laverne wonders why he can't look at her directly. She takes a step forward when she accidentally falls. Fortunately, Maurice quickly catches her. She feels Maurice's hot body and quickly checks if he's having a fever. Laverne immediately gets some water. However, Maurice feels something weird and confusedly leaves the room. Meanwhile, Elle and Theo are about to kiss when all of a sudden they hear people walking. Elle quickly tries to hide, but she falls on the floor together with Theo. She quickly apologizes, and seeing the look on her face, Theo thinks that she really hates him that much and allows her to go. Elle instantly places her hands on his neck and pulls him for a kiss. However, the happiness that Theo feels suddenly vanishes the moment Elle apologizes and asks him to act as if it never happened. She just has too much going on in her life to even have the courage to take responsibility for Theo too. The next day, Elle and Theo are acting strange. Theo seems so hot-headed that he tends to act rudely to other knights. Thankfully, Laverne butts in and informs him that he'll be partner with her for their recent task, while Maurice is Elle's partner. Ever since Theo learned about this, Maurice has been feeling eyes piercing him from behind. Meanwhile, in the slums, they can't help but reminisce about their childhood and talk about how good Elle is in combat. Elle suddenly feels some presence following them, and when they turn around, she's right. Turns out, a few men have been following them in an attempt to get the silver pin in their uniform. She keeps Maurice behind her back since he's not good at combat and faces the men as she gets ready to fight them. The princess tosses all the paper that Francois worked so hard to prepare just because she hates him for being a cheater. Pretty reasonable, right? A few moments later, the queen wishes to have lunch with her, but she refuses because of her planned visit to the Order of November with Charlotte in the afternoon. Upon hearing that, Francois begs to go with her, promising that he'll behave himself. Thinking that it could be fun if he sees Elle and Theo being all lovey-dovey, she agrees to his request. Meanwhile, Elle tries to fight the men who cornered them. Suddenly, someone dares to attack Maurice, and with just that, he falls to the ground. The attacker trembles in fear of what he did, and so they all leave before it escalates. After that, Elle asks him to stand since he's just acting all along. He really doesn't like fighting. Elle picks up a small bag with the logo of Gali Merchant Company. Elle suspects that these men were not merchants, but likely sailors due to the company's biggest influence in the West District. Thus, there's no reason to steal from others. Since Monica Gali's murder, the company isn't functioning well, and those men were probably not getting paid for the deliveries. Suddenly, Maurice realizes that Anne Sophie, daughter of a merchant company, was also murdered. Every year, large merchant companies will bid for a chance to go as a delegation to the East Continent. Then if the Queen isn't simply targeting the princess, but purposely attempting to interfere with the Eastern trade business. On the other hand, Laverne and Theo's first task is to wash dishes, but since he's too frustrated that he isn't being paired with Elle, he ends up breaking plates one after another, and so Laverne asks if things didn't work out for him. Remembering how Elle responded last night, Theo is troubled he can't pretend it never happened. Laverne is getting intrigued as to what really happened that night, but Theo refuses to tell. Suddenly, a knight bursts the door open, relieved that she has finally found their commander with the news of the princess's arrival. I never thought this commander is a fan of dramas. Theo manages to greet the princess, who seems to be having fun teasing Theo, but upon knowing that Elle hasn't been back from her patrol yet, the princess whines like a kid, but Theo's more concerned about Francois' appearance. In the training grounds, the princess remembers the boy who threatened her. However, she can't blame Elle for recruiting the child who has a great potential in becoming a knight. Suddenly, the news that Elle just arrived in the main gate prompts Charlotte to rush. Then she gazes above to see that Elle jumps down. In an attempt to stop Elle, Charlotte falls to the ground, making it hard to breathe that she can't even stand. When she looks up, Maurice offers her assistance to the medical room, carrying her in bridal style. However, as he turns around, he comes face to face with Laverne. I hope Laverne isn't getting the wrong idea here. Explain yourself, Maurice. Meanwhile, Francois hears some footsteps, assuming that it was Elle, but too bad. Theo already knew his trick. When Theo notices the letter in his hand, he immediately snatches it. Theo remembers that the crimes of serial killing and treason led to Elle's execution. Out of those mentioned, Elle's treason began with a single letter that encouraged Elle to meet him outside the East Gate by midnight. However, what awaited outside was a large army under the guidance of those from House Blois. At the time, it was public knowledge how much Elle was struggling due to her broken engagement, so everyone assumed she was the one who opened the castle gates. But it wasn't her. The actual person who did it was... However, now that he scans the letter, the contents are different. Still, he refuses to give back the letter. Francois then resorts to messing up with his mind, saying that he's the type of person that Elle despises the most. Theo grabs his collar and threatens to push him down a cliff, but Francois blurts out that Theo will never end up with Elle because they are total opposite of each other. So what? Don't you think that opposites attract? Have you ever held a magnet in your life? Suddenly, Elle arrives, which surprises Theo. Taking this as an opportunity to make Theo look bad, Francois starts acting hurt and scared. For a second, Theo is quite confident that Elle won't believe him, but Elle is actually very disappointed that he always resolves to hurting other people and solving problems on his own. Elle's words are like little daggers, constantly stabbing Theo's heart upon hearing that she has no use for an aide who disobeys her. She even orders him to leave the order by the end of the day. What? I know he's wrong, but isn't this too harsh? Thinking that Francois has the upper hand now, he starts explaining about the letter, but Elle just rips it apart before leaving. That night, Charlotte had a bad dream that Theo murdered someone. When she wakes up, she's surprised to see Elle beside her. But even she can tell that Elle feels so down, suspecting that it's about Theo. Though it might be good because she can't let Theo have her. She prepares herself to confess that she likes her. However, she can't tell her, thinking that Elle might end up hating her. Elle can't help but laugh at how cute Charlotte is. That afternoon, Elle promises to visit the princess so that she won't have to come all the way to the order. But the princess doesn't believe that, especially with Elle's busy schedule. But the princess reminds her of the National Foundation Day in a few months and the official period when a delegation from the East Continent comes for a visit. Though things have always gone smoothly throughout the years, the princess is quite troubled that it won't turn out to be good this time around. In order to avoid that, she asks Elle to oversee the bidding process. When the carriage takes off, she notices Theo waiting for her. As she moves past him, he sincerely apologizes for dishonoring one's life again and promises not to make another mistake. He then hugs her from behind, begging her not to shove him away. Come on, Elle. I feel so bad for Theo already. The next day at the meeting, Elle's having trouble concentrating now that Theo's seat is empty. Yesterday, she gave him a week to pack his things and leave. A week later, Elle starts to feel the throbbing pain of the idea that Theo won't be around anymore. She's the one who wanted this, but this time, she doesn't know what's right anymore. Just go and tell him to stay, Elle. I mean, it won't hurt to try, right guys? Outside, Maurice tries to have a conversation with Theo during his last day before sending him off. Theo glares at him for assuming that it would be his last day. Even Maurice notices how Elle's been so down and distracted for the past few days, and he doesn't want to leave everything to her. This time, he accompanies Theo since he has been working alone too. Upon knowing that the child of the Moro Merchant Company died last night, Theo figures out that the Queen will appear that night before the bidding since she is connected with the trade business in the East. While walking, Maurice recalls the place where the 16-year-old girl named Audrey Morier resides. Even though she's under the protection of the November Knights, Theo still knocks on the door and asks for her whereabouts. However, a cute little girl who seems fascinated by Theo's handsome face tells him that her sister left to meet some pale-faced man. Without a second thought, he dashes out to look for her. That night, he ends up standing in front of the guillotine where Elle was previously executed in her past life. Even up to this point, he's still stuck in that moment of caressing her head in his arms. If he ever fails to protect and save her this time, then he won't ever forgive himself. It would have been much easier to dispose of everyone as he did back then, but he promised not to do anything she disapproves of. But this time, the killer is none other than the Queen, who only targets weak children. Whatever it is the Queen is planning, he promises to himself that she won't be able to go near Elle. Suddenly, a pale-faced man emerges from the shadow as he squeezes the vegetables in his arms. It turns out, Theo has been waiting for him to strike. Theo lifts a pippin apple from the bag and drops it on the floor, saying that it's the Queen's signature after committing a murder. As he crushes it with his foot, he asks the man if he's already killed Audrey. The man simply denies, and his reason is that Audrey happens to be an old friend from his hometown. This time, the man blurts out that whatever Theo's doing, it won't make Duke Clermont come back. The man feels a chilling sensation down his spine, but he's quite surprised that Theo didn't hurt him at all. As Theo clenches his fists, he reminds him how Charlotte picked him off the cold street and took him as one of her own people. This time, Theo suspects that Charlotte has something to do with the recent case. He then threatens the man to go after Charlotte, but the man will do everything in his power to protect his master. I'm sorry, did he just say Charlotte? However, Theo slaps him the truth that he is no match for him. Suddenly, Laverne comes running with devastating news. A child named Matthew just got murdered and the higher-ups have taken Elle into custody. What? I don't think Elle has something to do with this in the first place. Looking at the man, it turns out that it wasn't Audrey who got murdered this time. 2 hours ago, Elle got arrested, and even if they reported to the princess, the higher-ups must have secured permission from her in taking Elle into custody. There's nothing they could do now but wait for Theo to rescue Elle. As Theo approaches Ciel's palace, the higher-ups are now voting for Elle's dismissal as the deputy commander of the Order of November. The higher-ups believe that there's also a possibility of Elle conspiring with the murderers herself, but none of their words get past her. Instead, she blames herself for being unable to save another life, but she is aware that the Queen is trying to frame her. As everyone mockingly agrees to her dismissal, Theodore kicks the door open and asks to take his master back. Oh my, he's so insanely handsome! Theo draws his sword, cutting the red card of the last person who votes to Elle's dismissal. As Theo kneels on the table, asking for Elle's hand, the higher-ups threaten her to take responsibility for what follows. Elle knows that in this absurd situation, she shouldn't do anything that would escalate the problem, and yet she has this urge to take his hand. The others try to stop Theo from passing through, but with just a single word, they flinch in fear that their heads might be next. Suddenly, a reserved man warns him that he won't be pardoned for the second time if he does something like this again. Theo just smirks and let them do what they please. Well, he's unstoppable that even the Queen has no control over him. In the hallway, Elle can't help but to ask for Theo's return, but Theo admits that he never left her, his only master. Elle asks how she became his master, but even Theo can't put it into words. From once having nothing in common to now having countless reasons that led them to hold hands in this moment, he wonders how she ended up being his master too. When he was younger, he used to pick flowers for his mother, but his brother forbade him from seeing Charlotte or getting associated with the Lorraine family because their father didn't go missing. The Lorraine family murdered him. Even after some time, his brother's anger and his mother's sorrow turns him into a whole different person. As he got accustomed to everything, he vowed to himself that he wouldn't ever lead a life where a friend would betray him at any moment, just like how his father ended up being killed by his best friend. From then on, Theo resolved to hurt other people as his way of dismissing them from his life. But one time, Elle challenged him into a duel where he lost for the first time. After that, he treated Elle to a restaurant as a custom. This time around, Elle was still so in love with Francois. This is the first time Theo saw a different expression aside from having acted cold towards others. During the ceremony, he heard that Elle applied to the Order of the November Knights. They didn't see each other for again until way later. Around 5 years after that, Theo received a letter from his father. When Theodore became the princess's guardian knight, he met Elle in the palace. He got arrogant and rude back then, but Elle was too professional and composed, which left him dumbfounded. At that time, Charlotte and Elle crossed paths, but Charlotte was more fond of Theo than her. In the dining hall, the princess was annoyed as to why Charlotte brought him with her. Charlotte reasoned out that since he saved the princess from being kidnapped, he should be eating with them as well. Theo agreed, saying that there was no such thing as doing something purely for the sake of others. Also, he admitted that he just rescued her because the queen ordered him to. Time passed, and he already reached his 5th year of serving the princess, and during this time, he received a letter from his father to meet him outside the East Gate on October 8th. What? This is the exact letter that Francois attempted to give to Elle! The first time, what he felt while reading the letter was anger. But to verify the truth, he opened the gate and was surprised when Elle was framed. He realized that there was a huge mistake, so he rushed down to the cellar and confronted her about it. Elle knew everything, so Theo encouraged her to tell the truth since he didn't have much will to live anyway. However, Elle's response startled him. As much as she didn't want to die, she was still responsible for House Blois with a younger sibling to take care of. But if the truth would ever come to light and he'd get taken into custody, she knew that he'd probably plead guilty and accept his sentence. In her eyes, Theo appeared to be someone who wished to cling to life at all costs, despite how much he'd deny that. At that moment, he realized that before meeting Elle, he was a mess who didn't even know how carelessly he was living. As a knight, Elle was willing to help him live his life to the fullest and to do whatever they could to survive. After that, Elle was continuously being forced to answer why she killed that person. As their struggle for survival continued, she became his everything. He visited her every night with a worried face, but Elle assured him that as long as he knew about her innocence, she'd still be able to keep her honor until the end, and so she'd gladly die for him. As for Theo, it went both ways. If he'd end up falling in love with her like this, then he'd gladly accept his death as fate. I don't know about you guys, but I'm bawling my eyes out here. This is the kind of love that you can only find once in a lifetime. From then on, Theo would sit on the floor with his back facing the bars, listening to Elle's story. That night, he admitted that if she was to end up disappearing on him, he'd go on for the rest of his life unable to forget the void she left. This is just so tragic. Why does she have to die like this? The memory of that moment would likely last forever and haunt him until his last breath. For the last time, he pleaded with her to tell the truth before ending up being executed, but that time, Elle didn't think she'd leave him. She also believed that he'd come to forget about her in time, and that was fine by her as long as he'd be all right. But no, Theo begged the heavens and the earth to have mercy on him and return her to that day, to which he did. Ever since that moment when she sacrificed herself for him, she had been his one and only master. Back in the present, he never let go of her hand as he confesses that if he establishes that he belongs to her from the start, perhaps that just might come true one day. Elle's cheeks turn red, but suddenly Laverne and the others worriedly come and welcome her. That night, the commander held a welcome back party. Elle has finished drinking one glass after another, but she's still not getting drunk. Her heart is racing so fast, suspecting that it's because she's happy that Theo didn't leave the order. As their fingers slightly touch each other, Theo urges her to go get some fresh air. Outside, as she's about to thank him, Theo's head rests on her shoulder with his arms locking her waist. He admits that he was going to die in sorrow of their separation, to which Elle also admits that she couldn't focus on work either. And so Elle asks for him to return as her aide and nothing more. Theo was kind of expecting something more, and as he steps closer and touches her face, he makes it clear that he will always remain by her side. The way he stares intently at her makes me want to roll over. This time, their faces are barely inches apart. Theo closes that gap and presses his lips on her in the sweetest way. After some time of being lovey-dovey, Elle advises him to go in first. But before he did, he kissed her one more time, telling her to come in because he'll start to miss her. This makes Elle even more red. Inside, Laverne offers Theo her special cocktail, but before he can drink it, Elle knocks him down with one blow. Maurice gives her the key to his room and sends them off, but Laverne asks to go with her. In the carriage, she asks if Maurice is in a relationship with Charlotte. Elle tells her she's worried for nothing because Charlotte can't even recall his face. Realizing that it was all just a misunderstanding, Laverne goes back to the bar and drinks a whole glass. When Maurice shows up, she suddenly lands a kiss on his cheek, enough to make him blush. I swear, this couple needs some screen time too. They look so cute. As she watches Theo sleeping, she mumbles how he might have been flirting with other women too. But still, she's okay to how things are at the moment and kisses his lips before leaving. It turns out, Theo is awake all along and hears everything. He then punches the world, cursing as to how he nearly took her right then and there. Chill, sir. Meanwhile, Commander Blanche and his companions are on a ship, tailing down a human trafficking target. Confident that Elle will always agree to anything he asks of her, he instructed his subordinates to send her a letter. That morning, Elle greets Theo, but Maurice interrupts their public display of affection. As soon as Laverne goes inside to deliver a letter from the Order of October, Maurice can't help but hide behind Theo, still embarrassed as to what happened last night. To avoid that, Laverne kisses Elle's cheek to make Maurice think that it's normal and that it doesn't mean she has feelings for anyone. You can fool them, but not us, Laverne. As Elle opens a blank letter with an opera ticket inside, she knows she has to make a move on her own. Suddenly, Jacques bursts the door open and asks to go too, but Elle firmly says no. But he's not going to give up that easily. Hours later, the carriage arrives, and it reveals how they both look like totally different people. We have to thank Laverne for not gatekeeping Theo's body in this new look. Charlotte notices how cautiously the maids are treating her. She even overhears them talking about how worried they are that the members of AILE are being targeted by the killer. They now all feel uneasy being around her even though they're her servants. Upset, Charlotte instantly goes running to Andre. He quickly goes to her, worried that she's only wearing light clothes. He wraps his coat around her so she doesn't catch a cold. She then asks him to teach her how to use a sword. Meanwhile, Elle and Theo are in disguise. They are pretending to be master and servant who are secretly lovers. They are undercover so they can infiltrate an opera theater, which is actually a criminal den that auctions people from the East. How despicable! Theo is actually pretty smug about them acting like lovers. Elle, on the other hand, is pretty concerned about the attire Laverne made him put on. He's practically topless. This is not good for my heart. When they arrive, they are denied entry despite having tickets. Elle is about to escalate the situation earlier than expected. Fortunately, Theo steps in, wrapping his arms around her. He bribes the guard into letting them in, reasoning that his master needs a new plaything other than him to satisfy her. When they are seated, Elle tries to locate Blanche, but she is nowhere to be found. Theo remarks that he is starting to get jealous. Suddenly, a woman wearing a mask sits beside her, halting their conversation. Meanwhile, backstage, a man has just arrived from capturing another one of their so-called items, and it's revealed to be Jacques. Announcements start, but the lady beside Elle tells her that she seems like she belongs on the second floor rather than there. The masked lady tells her that the people on the first floor are of no importance, and the actual show is in the VIP room. The moment Jacques is left in a room, he smugly takes out the key that he stole from the guard. Even though Elle said he couldn't come, he has never been the obedient type. He quickly leaves the room to look for other children that have been kidnapped like him. He discovers a room that for some reason is producing a certain smell. When he opens it, he sees lots of unconscious children lying on the beds. Unfortunately, Jacques has been discovered by the guards who are wearing masks. They tell him that his escape doesn't matter since he has already inhaled it. Moments later, he loses consciousness. Meanwhile, Elle and Theo are buying all the children in the auction. They can't let those children fall into sinister hands. Because of this, the two of them get an offer to enter the VIP room. Elle rises from her seat and addresses the woman beside her who turns out to be Adelaide. As Elle is being guided to the second floor, Adelaide tells Elle that they'll talk later. Unfortunately, Elle and Theo find themselves locked inside a room. Turns out, things are going too smoothly. The criminals probably find them suspicious. Elle suspects that they found out that she has a sword under her dress. In order to alleviate suspicion, the two of them begin acting intimate with each other. Whoa! Stop it, you two! My heart can't take it! They begin to make so much ruckus that the guards outside barge inside, thinking that they're trying to escape. When they discover what the two are actually doing, they instantly think that they are mistaken. They figure that she is indeed just someone looking for enjoyment. They are escorted to the top floor. Elle can tell instantly that the people on the top floor all look like high-ranking nobles or someone serving one. They are given a card and a pen so they can write their preference and the product will be brought to them. Ugh, these people are so gut-wrenchingly horrible! Bring them hell, Elle! Elle decides to write a response that won't raise any suspicion. Suddenly, a man beside her with clear malicious intent speaks to her. He offers to give her a much better time than what the place is auctioning. Theo is about to give the man a good beating, but Elle stops him. She warns the sorry excuse of a man beside her to be careful since Theo can be violent. You better not mess with his girl. When the cards have been collected, a bunch of beds are rolled out to the guests. In it lies unconscious people from the East. At this point, they are confused as to how the VIP room differs from the first floor. Elle and Theo reveal the person given to them. They are confused since the person given to her was not what she ordered. She asks an attendant about their mistake. She has written that she wants to have the youngest child they have. She is horrified to learn that she is given a pregnant woman, which means that she is getting 2 items at once. The VIP room does not simply traffic people from the East. The guests are allowed to do anything to the victims, even extract their body parts. Elle feels like she's about to puke at this point. And I can't blame her. This is honestly disgusting. I seriously can't stomach this. Theo embraces her and covers her eyes. He tells her that she doesn't have to hold back. Whatever happens at night, she can simply blame it on her mad dog. Elle throws her fan at the announcer, piercing his eye out. She takes out her sword and tells Theo to run wild. Meanwhile, Jacques gains consciousness along with the other children in the room. He uses this chance to escape, telling the others to follow him. Unfortunately, a guard stands in their way. The guards complain about them trying to escape when there's a commotion outside. Jacques instantly knows that this is Elle's doing. He whacks the guard with the door and leads the others to safety. Along the way, something catches his eye, a gold plate in a small chest. In the VIP room, Elle and Theo are causing havoc. Theo is fascinated as he watches Elle move like she's dancing. A bunch of guards surrender, and they offer to take them to where the captives are being held. Elle orders Theo to go himself since she has some business to take care of on the first floor. She also doesn't want the children to see her covered in blood. Suddenly, Blanche appears. He tells them that the rest of the place has been taken care of. To her surprise, Theo points his sword at Blanche. Elle commands Theo to put his sword away, wary of what he may do to Blanche. Blanche stops Elle from commanding Theo to leave him, as he is enjoying the intimidation. He turns the table on Elle's mad dog and taunts him to do whatever he wants, as he holds Theo's sword to his chest. Suddenly, 2 of Blanche's men come rushing, relieved to see him well and daring. As pissed off as he is, he stops them from interfering as Elle stops Theo from making Blanche an enemy of the kingdom. Theo eventually heeds Elle's commands, hiding his sword to stop the ruckus. Elle apologizes on behalf of her aide, but Blanche doesn't let this slide so easily. He threatens Theo that if he continues to be ignorant of whoever he deals with, he's gonna get killed. A memory comes to Theo's mind. It was when Elle de Bloise was interrogated for the assumption of killing Leah. Yet again, he shrugs off worry as he is still on a mission. Jacques nervously sits in the carriage. Elle is peacefully sleeping, leaning comfortably on Theo's shoulders. She is clearly tired from all the action a while back. Smugly, Theo triggers Jacques by asking if he is jealous. Jacques refuses to admit it and expresses his respect and gratitude for Elle. Theo then reminds Jacques that he owes his life to the deputy commander, Elle, for saving him from being harmed by those human traffickers. Maurice welcomes him into the castle to discuss the crest that Jacques found in the basement. The crest is the reason why it was easy for the traffickers to bring people from the East. Unexpectedly, a member of the royal family may be part of this trafficking scheme. The next plan is to find out who the culprit is. Elle stands to leave, but Maurice lets them stay the night. However, the moment Elle decides to take a bath, Theo is also heading into the bathroom. The two are put in a tight situation. Theo promptly suggests the 2 of them take a shower together. How brave! OMG, stop it, guys! At first, Elle feels awkward about his offer, but then again, he points out how tired Elle is throughout the day. She probably won't be able to bathe herself properly. With that reasoning in mind, they decide to bathe together. He takes his position and washes her hair. He gently massages her head, and it makes Elle remember her maid's hands working on her hair. Even though his hand is a bit rough, his touch still feels like he's working for someone precious to him. It makes her heart tingle for some reason. Suddenly, he moves on top of her so he can adjust her position and avoid applying shampoo to her eyes. This sudden movement startles Elle, which only makes her blush at this point. He asks her to close her eyes as he strokes her head to calm her down. As she closes her eyes, he leans closer. Her scent and everything about her is so close to him, just like he's always dreamed of. Suddenly, he has a flashback. He speaks with Elle, who is imprisoned in a dungeon. They discuss the queen's potential scheme of events to lure them to open the gates of the castle. Shortly, two knights come to get Elle out of the cell to face her trial. Then a splash of water brings him back to reality. Elle asks him why he was dozing off when he is supposed to assist her. She then figures that he probably is as tired as she is from the day's activities. After some thought, he assumes she may be thinking that he's ogling her, so he sees himself out of the bathroom. However, in Elle's mind, she thinks he's leaving because he's mad at her splashing him. She tries to stop him by tugging his towel. However, she does not expect the flimsy towel to be easily tugged free. Before she knows it, he stands naked before her. She panics and dips her face into the water, apologizing for what she has done. He calmly wraps the towel around his hips and tells her that she can always tell him if she ever wants to see anything. This guy is getting even naughtier. Help! On his way out, he casually tells Maurice that they bathe together, which stuns the poor guy for a second. Elle arrives at the CL Palace to face the queen, yet she has left the palace without waking Princess Pippin up. Pippin, as soon as she learns about this, complains about how Miss Montherlant got to chat with Elle while she was deep asleep. She throws a tantrum and curses not to ever like Elle anymore. However, when Miss Montherlant presents her with the letter Elle left for her, Princess Pippin instantly reads the 5-sentence letter that Elle wrote her. In the letter, Elle apologizes for not being able to speak with Princess Pippin and informs her of regarding Elle's registration in the coming jousting tournament. Pippin continues to read the full letter, only to throw another tantrum moments later because it's too short. In the kingdom of Raun, preparations for the jousting tournament commence. It is a type of sport wherein the players have to knock down their opponents from their horses or break their spears to win. The one who wins will get the chance to stand beside the queen and offer their victory to their lover or the one they serve. For Elle, she serves Princess Pippin and promises to devote her win to the little princess. Meanwhile, Theo shares how he took a bath during tea time with his cousin, Charlotte and Pippin. Pippin seems furious about his perverted statement and defends Elle for not doing such deeds with him. He obviously is trying to test her feelings for Elle despite receiving a slap from Charlotte. Yet again, he remembers his discussion with Maurice and Elle about the culprit behind the trafficking and wonders who among them is the suspect. On the other end, Elle continues to do her delayed paperwork, but is constantly distracted by her time in the bathroom with Theo. She slams her head on the desk while Dame Laverne arrives to test her patience. Dame Laverne tries to ask if Elle can disqualify her from the jousting tournament, but she instantly refuses as Dame Laverne leaves her in mystery. As she finishes for the day, Theo comes in to escort her home, only to be a little hurt by her when she tells him it is inefficient of him to do so as they aren't even dating. She leaves him speechless. In the abode of Lady Adelaide, she quivers in worry since the letter she expects to receive did not come today. She bites her finger to compensate for the stress she is feeling about the human trafficking of the Easterners that she got involved in. Turns out the masked person was the one who struck a good trade deal with Adelaide for the use of her ship. Little did she know, the masked man used her ships for human trafficking. Now she is stressed because of Elle's warning about disobeying the law of the royalty as well as harming many people. She asks Elle to let it slip this one time if she thinks she is her friend. Elle trusts her one last time, but in return, Adelaide has to turn over the masked man to Elle. But at the moment, she still hasn't received any response from the masked man. Meanwhile, Dame Laverne encounters Theo and shares how she overheard his conversation with Elle last night. She gives him advice to slightly change his strategy a bit so that he can finally win Elle's heart. In contrast, Dame Elle seems to be occupied with her work, as she is also given the responsibility of heading the bidding process and delegating the departure of the merchants. Theo arrives at the port where Elle is. As if sharing his intense feelings, Elle tries to hold his hand, assuming that he is also trying to hold hers. To her shock, he rejects her touch as he changes their topic. Is he taking Dame Laverne's advice? In the office, Blanche lies down on the couch. One of his people fearfully wakes him up to fulfill his duty. It has been days since the human trafficking situation, yet the paperwork in Blanche's office is already an ocean of piled up paperwork. He only needs to sign the papers as his subordinates are the ones working on it for him. However, he still refuses. A knock on the door is heard. To his surprise, Theo enters his office. Without hesitation, they both exchange sarcastic greetings, and Theo abruptly asks who Leah is. This question shocks Blanche for a second. He recovers and tells him that he doesn't plan on telling a mad dog like him who Leah is. So he tells Theo to leave or he'll kill him. However, Theo stands firm. An argument between them arises and leads to the point where Blanche challenges Theo to win the jousting tournament this year and beat Blanche. In return, information about Leah will be given. Inevitably, Theo accepts the challenge despite promising Elle that he'll ensure her victory. On the other hand, Elle stares at her food blankly until her maid tells her how she seems to look so in love these days. With that, she rushes to the mirror to check herself, worrying her maid. Astounded, she asks herself if she is indeed in love with Theo, but also worries people may spread rumors about her falling in love with her aide, so she has to suppress it. The next day, the Knights of the Order of November hold a preliminary tournament to choose the 2 best representatives of the order. Elle has won for 4 consecutive years. Still, the Knights are still bursting with determination. The preliminary begins with Dame Laverne and Theo in the first match. Dame Laverne, despite all her failures to enter the final match, still imagines a future where people praise her for winning. Yet she sees that as a burden instead. She cannot let herself stand out no matter what. Flashback when Laverne was yet a child. Her father keeps telling her to live an ordinary life and avoid the spotlight to keep herself safe. She should not be ambitious to win the tournament. The first preliminary match begins, and the only thing in her mind is to lose. So as she falls from her horse, she anticipates pain the usual way. Unexpectedly, as she opens her eyes, she feels no pain because Maurice is already slumped below her, catching her from the fall. In the clinic, she scolds Maurice for preventing her from falling because it makes her feel guilty. She can't stand seeing him hurt. Meanwhile, the first set of preliminary matches comes to an end, with Theo sweeping an easy win while Elle sets herself a slot in the finals during the second round of matches. The day of the jousting tournament arrives, and the elegant queen shows up before her people, along with Josephine, who is eager to receive her wreath of victory from Elle expectantly. Elle easily garners her last win to move up to the semifinals. In the same way, Blanche and Theo win their matches without much effort. After Elle's win, the girls in the bleachers scream their lungs out, simping for Elle to no end. Meanwhile, she stops her horse in front of a knight in charge and asks for any updates about Theo's matches. Hearing how he wins his matches so easily, she wonders why he entered the tournament when he told her he had no interest in such events. As she enjoys her break, Theo arrives with his horse and tells her to ride his horse from now on. Confused, Theo lets her ride the horse as he follows after her. They both sit on the same horse as he tells her it may be the last time she'll see him. With a serious expression, Elle faces him and tells him that she has never been fond of a person who is weak. Later on, during the match between Blanche and Theo, it becomes clear that Theo is using Elle's horse. Blanche sees this as a disadvantage, given how bad the horse's condition is for some reason. Meanwhile, at the other arena, Elle cannot shrug off the bad feelings she got from Theo. However, despite her thoughts, she still has a match to attend to right at this moment. The announcer calls her name desperately to let her come out of the arena at once. But then she can't stop the nagging feeling. The match can't stop her from leaving, so she rides her black horse away from the arena, away from her chance to win and become the champion. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!